Welcome back to the channel of Truth, Trust, and Transparency. Today, we're hitting up another one of your questions in my Instagram DMs regarding property, portfolio building, and scaling. Remember, not financial advice. However, if you ask me a question, obviously going to assume that you want my 10 cents to give you a couple of things to think about and consider, then take to people like your mortgage broker. Now, the question comes in from Crystal and it reads, "Hi Davey, I've recently come across your channel and have been really enjoying watching your daily videos and the general and logical advice you provide in them. Thank you so much, I appreciate it. Was wondering what your thoughts were on what I should do next in my portfolio. 28 years of age, I have 3 investment properties." Congratulations. Let's document a little bit of this. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 houses worth around 2 million in total, 2 mil value, negative $10,000 per year. I was thinking of purchasing a more expensive property, around $750,000 to $800,000, as my next IP in the Central Coast or Newcastle, but calculate that this would make me around $40,000 negative a year. I think CC/Newcastle, Central Coast/Newcastle, will benefit largely from the 5% deposit scheme caps increasing to $1.5 million. I have equity released from a PPOR. Okay, so I'm just getting PPOR. So I'm just getting, look, there's not heaps of detail in these questions, and if you do write to me, the more detail that you can give, like in terms of the date that you buy property, the amount that you buy them for, the current value, and the debt, it allows me to be able to plan it out really nicely. Here, I don't even know the PPOR. I don't know how much that you've released equity from this, but let's make a couple of assumptions. I'm going to say that, you know, these are around sort of that 700K mark each. That will give us 2.1, which is around the total value that you've said. But let me dig into it. And there's a couple of things that this type of question, the reason that I chose it, because I think a lot of people fall into the same mistake when they're at this part of the portfolio. One thing that you must always understand, for everyone out there that is building a property portfolio, it is equal amounts of, this is the portfolio we're trying to build, this part in the center, of growth and cash flow. Because if you focus too much on growth, which you have been, you're going to find that you're going down the path of it costing you so much money to hold that you're spending all your surplus income on your property portfolio. The quality of life isn't there, and you have to wait a very long time to be able to cash in. So this is what I would do in this if it were me in this situation. You don't have to do it, Crystal, but here's some things to consider. So number 1, assess current portfolio. Now, if you're 28, I'm going to make an assumption to say that you've only been probably building a portfolio in the last couple of years. So it tells me that we might not be at the stage yet where we're selling any of the 3 that we've purchased. But one thing you can look at, and remember, you're only negative 10K a year, so it's not a heap of money. You're out of pocket $200 a week. So the first thing that I'm going to do with your current properties is I'm going to assess those 3 and I'm going to look at the rents and I'm going to see, are the rents all up to date with market value? Because if you can pinch $20 each to bring them all up to market value, now I don't know the tenants, I don't know the story with them, but if some of them have under rented, or you've had tenants in there for the last couple of years, they haven't had that increase, and you can see that there is a substantial gap between what your tenants are paying and what they should be paying, or what is market value, then I'd look to see if there are rental increases in line with the market value. Remember, you're only trying to get $200 a week across 3 properties, 70, that's a lot. But if we can get that number down, that's great. The second is there any opportunities in these 3 properties to be able to increase cash flow? What do I mean by that? Look at the floor plans of these 3 properties. Are there any larger houses that have, say, 2 living rooms, that have two dining rooms that have a study or that have a room that can be converted legally into another bedroom. We see this play all the time. A lot of our members do this play, is that they buy a 3-bedroom for a 3-bedroom price. Then by the time they settle on it, they've converted into a 4-bedroom, which means they get 4-bedroom rent, 4-bedroom value at 3-bedroom price. So with any of these properties, are there any opportunities in the floor plate that you can convert any of these? I'm hoping that you're buying established, they're bigger houses, they provide more opportunities compared to sort of that cookie cutter stuff on 200-300 square meter blocks. But is there any opportunities there, right? Is there any opportunities there? There are other opportunities that I'd look at. So if I'm not looking at rents, if I'm not looking at, is there any appetite in your markets to add that 4th bedroom? If you're not able to convert it from the floor plate, is it as easy as adding a part on? Let's cost out and see what that was. Is that a $30,000 exercise to get an extra $150 a week in rent? I'm not too sure because I don't know the exact markets, but I'd be having a look in these markets and seeing, okay, we've got 3 bedrooms. What are the 4 bedrooms renting for? Is there a large gap? Now, if there's only maybe a $20 gap between 3 and 4 bedrooms, your property manager is a really good person to talk to here, then potentially it's not worth it. But if there is a large gap, then, what process do we need to go down to be able to add on a bedroom? The next level of this is also granny flats. Granny flat play. You said 1 in Melbourne. You said 2 in Perth. So again, not too sure on the councils or those particular areas, but is this an example where those particular markets, there is the hunger and the need for a granny flat play where you can spend circa 175K? For example, if I can rent that granny flat out for $450 a week, that's going to give me 11% yield plus, which will help balance out and provide cash flow for the rest of that portfolio and to be able to cover that $10,000 or that $200 a week deficit. So there's opportunities like that there, right? That's one thing. We look at what we have currently. The second, and this is, I'm not too sure, Crystal, if you have a partner or not, or if you are single, but you have to have a think about the PPR, right? Because the PPR at the moment is not serviced by, you're not getting any rental income as far as I can see from your PPR. So that is going to be draining you. It could be $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year paying off your mortgage. So is there an opportunity where we can go, okay, let's get some rent in for that to improve our borrowing and increase our chances or our likelihood of being able to further the portfolio? I'm not too sure. Conversation that you need to have if you do have a partner or by yourself, something to assess and crunch the numbers on. What is the PPR? What if I was to rent this out, what's my mortgage cost? Where am I at there? Is there an opportunity there? There might not be, but just something to look at if you don't want to go too much into the negative territory. Now, number 2, it sounds like you have balanced the capital growth play. You've balanced a lot on this side, but now I feel like you're kind of going for a yield play. You want something, that is a 5% plus yield to rebalance this portfolio. Because you're saying that you're looking in Melbourne, you're saying that you're looking again potentially in Melbourne. You're probably not going to get this in a normal resi deal in Melbourne. So you might need to look in a couple of regional areas that aren't Melbourne, or maybe it is regional Melbourne, or is there opportunities where you can do these sorts of plays? Buying granny flat play, yield play, 3 to 4 bedroom unit conversion play. Can I buy a stack of 2 units, 3 units that are under rented and come back, get them yielded, get them rented up to market value? Is there any of those opportunities? But I think next you need to do a yield play to balance your portfolio. Best person to talk to as well is going to be your mortgage broker to crunch those numbers for you. If you don't have a really good property investment mortgage broker, talk to me. I'm happy to recommend them one. You don't even have to tell them that I sent you because I don't care as long as you get a good mortgage broker out of it. You think the world of me and you think the world of your mortgage broker. Number 3, the mistake that you have made is that you said you think Central Coast and Newcastle is going to benefit from the $1.5 million threshold that the government's just brought in. Your issue here is that you make a massive assumption. It is going to benefit all markets under $1.5 million. What the government doesn't tell you though, and what they haven't done at the moment, sure, they've increased the threshold up to $1.5 million for the deposit. But guess what the government hasn't done yet, to my knowledge, and when making this video? The government has not increased the stamp duty concessions from the $1 million or whatever it was up to 1.5. Now, what does that mean? Is for the people that are buying in these markets still need to pay full freight stamp duty, which means they still need that large amount of money. You can get in with the 5% deposit. Then when you go to 1.5 and you're up for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 in stamp duty, it's still going to hurt. You said that these markets, you think that they're going to be affected by, a lot of those markets, anything sub million is going to be affected by these, where there are first home buyers wanting to enter the market. We don't think, Crystal. What do we use? We let the data tell us. Let the data tell you where there is the most demand for the property. H-tag, classic example. I go through, I can see what areas there is the most demand that is starving supply. That's where we'll get house prices. Don't make a decision based on what you think will happen. No. Now, there's nothing wrong with looking at Central Coast and Newcastle, looking at the data, but is that the best place to spend your money? Potentially, it may not be. So you need to open your thinking. You need to look and let the data tell the story. Where is there a limited choking supply? Where is an overarching demand? We can see that in the data. We can predict that in the data. We can see when that starts to happen. We can see when those suburbs start to become a warm spot before they become a hot spot and every buyer's agency in Australia is on them. Now, number 4, you also said you're considering a more expensive purchase. This is what you need to think about, right? There's like this inverse relationship with property and yields. Most people have seen me talk about this before, but I'll share it with you. As property prices increase, yield decreases. So if you think about your properties that are like, say, $3 million, they might have a 2% yield. If you think of properties that are $1 million, they might have a 3.5% yield. 750 might have a 4% yield. Or if we go back this way, maybe we get a property that's 500, maybe we get a property that's 500 that's at a 5% yield. At the moment, I think you need to talk to your broker about what that number there needs to be and let that inform you, because as you go into the $7, $8, $9, $1 million, your yield is falling off. Now that is okay, but if you're complaining to me about cash flow, it tells me that your income may not be in that sort of area that allows you to hold a $40,000 negative a year property portfolio plus a PPR. So usually I say to people, consider, there's nothing wrong with those negative geared properties at 7, 8, 9, $1 million, but you need to be able to weather that storm. So if you can't and you're scared of that, and you look at your income, and let's just say you're on 150, goes down 120 after tax, 40 grand is going to be a third of it. You might look at that and go, nah, that's too much, Dave, because then I've got to pay my PPR as well. Okay, so why don't we come back in purchase price a little bit, get into those markets where the yield's a little bit higher and allows us to keep going. That will also lead into number 5, and that is plan. Failure to plan is also called planning to fail. Your issue that you might find that you've run into is that you've got down to purchase number 3, and then you go, oh, hang on a sec. What's the issue? You need to start with the end in mind. where do you want to be, or you and your partner want to be, what time frame, how long, and then work backwards. Calculate how many property purchases is that for how much. You know, do we need 2 more in the portfolio so that we can sell properties 4 and 5 in 10 years' time, pay off the PPR, pay off some debt on these 2, and keep these 3? You need to have that plan in mind. You've already started and you got 3 down the track. So I don't know if you've bought these yourself or with a buyer's agent. Hopefully you have some sort of plan. If you haven't, then I'd start to think about putting together a plan about what those next property purchases look like. You can go in and buy the yield play, but you need to know what you're doing with each of those properties, because that dictates what type of asset you buy, what age of that asset, what structure you buy that asset, what yield and how long, and what market you buy in. It's hard to give you those if you don't have the plan, but I'll give you an example. You might say, okay, Dave, well, these, we've got enough to buy another 2 property purchases. Might be you and your partner. And the 2 property purchases that we want to buy are going to be yield plays. We want to buy them, retain them for a long time in our portfolio. So if you're buying them for the next 30 years, then I'm going to have a think about, and you're retaining them for your portfolio, okay, then I'm going to have a think about the type of asset. I'm not going to potentially be buying a broken down shack in a regional market that's going to have heaps of maintenance issues. Maybe it's a little bit newer, you know. Then it makes it easy then it might be, okay, well, that might be a trust buy then, if we're going to be getting an income from these in 15, 20 years time to be able to distribute it to us and or our family members. So see how that sort of has shown us not only what type of asset, but also the structure in which that we're holding it. That's sort of what you need to be doing, not just buying for the sake of it. So you really need to think about what the plan is, then work backwards into what those next sort of 2 purchases are, and then go from there. But Crystal, hopefully I've given you a couple of things to think about. If you're watching this and you found value from it, or if you're watching this, one of the 25 people that do watch my videos, and your name is Crystal, and you wrote me this question, I really appreciate you staying this far into the video and asking me the question. If you've got value from it, subscribe. 2,500 by the end of the year. I'm not giving up on that. I don't think I'll get there, but I'm still going to show up for you guys every day. Really appreciate it. And as always, I'll see you guys tomorrow.